Hello everyone. As we told in our test 1 discussion that in test 2 we'll talk in details about case studies. So let's take in this. We'll start from case studies. So when we talk about case studies, so you should have 3 things in your mind. One, that is called instructions. What are the instructions in the case studies? That is called questions. Questions and commands. Yes. Then structure. The structure that you write in terms of introduction, body, conclusion, and the third is ethical answer. Since case studies can be related to any such subject matter, then we have to ensure that whether you are trying to imbibe certain ethical dimensions, the same matter can be dealt in other subjects with other such orientation. Like say there can be a legal orientation or there can be purely environmental orientation. So we have to see that ethical answer means what ethics we are trying to write, or what ethics in terms of, let's say, philosophy, or let's leader philosophers, this, or any such, let's say, such principles which we have to relate. So what we are trying to write. Hence, if you understand about the instructions, then you will be able to do better. You will be writing exactly what they are demanding. Similarly, if you structure you write, it gives you sense of completeness of the answer, and this is what the paper demands. That is how it will be also a distinguishing factor. Many a time you find that a candidate writes answer, but in that we don't find that he has written anything which can be considered as something called ethical, or the candidates write very artificially, deliberately, they refer it, and that also becomes unethical, because when anything you write that is called artificial or it is very deliberate, so it is also not ethical. Means it should come very natural way. Like say when you write anything related to education, so education itself is enlightening, and education builds good character. That we have to write. The education can help in building good character, like say when Vivekananda talks that education can be basis for building good character. So it becomes obvious when we are writing. Rather than, let's say, deliberately we try to forcibly writing philosophies, philosophers, leaders. So these things will become very artificial, and that will be, instead of working advantage for you, it can become disadvantages. So this is what you should care when you have to write and do better in case studies. Although throughout discussion in all those 7 tests, so you will come to understand by different ways, different things when we'll talk, and different types of instructions. Now let's take, if you take first call instructions. Instructions if you take. So you should know that if you go by 2013, so in 2013 they asked options type. Questions were about options type. And then they had to, students had to select write pros and cons, select best option, then give justification for that best option. That was this. Now if you take 2022, again they're back with options. They're back with options. But they have changed. Here they write, here they ask about options. You write about pros, cons, select best, justify. This. So that is how they ask, and that is all in one instruction, one option, one question. So these things were written in just question. There will be a question and it will be written everything. But now what they have done is, they have, let's say, created it option A, then say that evaluate, means critically evaluate. This can be B, and then can be, let's say, simply what are the options available. That can be another option C. So the same question they are asking in 3 categories, not one category. This, and then you will find out this options. So options, if you write, they are asking what are the available options. Then they are not writing pros and cons. They are writing critically evaluate. Critically evaluate, and they are not asking that necessarily you select this best option. They are not asking this. Rather, they can say simply critically evaluate. Then, as we have asked in question, this is today in question number 7, case study will talk. So, course of action. What is your course of action? Plus, this can be the question. Plus, let's say it can be ethical dilemma and ethical issues. This. So you can find that this, the way they are asking the questions, instructions. So we cannot attempt them at our understanding of to this 2013. You have to see this, and it is the instructions which will decide ultimately that whether you are writing your answer. So whatever the answers you are writing, the answer that you write, so whether this answer is correct or right. Content can be correct, but whether the answer is trying to address this, or it is not. Let's say it is writing critically evaluate, you are writing course of action. They are saying write course of action, so you are selecting the option. They are saying ethical dilemma, you write ethical issues. They are saying ethical issues, you write ethical dilemma. So are you clear about them? So 4 things that nowadays questions dominate in case study. This. So are you clear about the 4 these different types of instructions? And we find this is what our experience that those who are new candidates, even the old candidates not getting proper guidance, so they will not have proper understanding, they mess up with them. Similarly, some candidates are not able to write them what they are at all. They write anything, even they write positive sentence as ethical issues. But anything that is issues cannot be affirmative sentence. Similarly, ethical dilemma, so they write only what you can say, many a time they will write ethical issues, or they will write only this versus that. Anyhow, they will try to write generic aspect rather than the specific, the question which is demanding. Hence, we will try to clear while answering this question. Already we have told in test discussion 1 a bit model answer is also given. By that model answer also you should understand. But yes, in this second test we decided to go and tell a bit more about case studies, that how you can improve yourself. And that is how it is the first thing about the case studies, that you should know the instructions. And therefore you should yourself try to read from 2013 to 2022 how different instructions, you make a list of instructions. You make a list of instructions to see that how different types of instructions have been asked. And those, let's say, instructions, by those list of instructions, you can do better by writing this. So content is not only important, we have to ensure that whether the content we are writing, it is as per the instructions that question is asking. This is what you have to ensure. Then we have to see about what we say difference between when we say instructions. When we say this called pros and cons, means when we talk options, and then evaluate when we say course of action. This when we say ethical dilemma. And ethical issues. This. Now, when they are saying that you have to write options, options should be discrete options. Let's A, B, C. You can write. You can write A, B, C, D, and they will not be interrelated. So option A is itself a complete option. B is itself a complete option. C, D itself is a complete option. Now, in this option, when they say that write the most appropriate options, you should write at least one option which can be considered as most appropriate. In this, at least any one option you should write which can be considered as most appropriate. If they are asking at all, and select it. This course of action means it is step by step. It is in order 1, 2, 3, 4. In that discussion, we told that. And when orders go like this. We go from, let's say, we go in ascending order. First option should be this, second option, third option, fourth option. So that way, let's say that from gradual to we go in ascending order. This is how the first step is very initial step. This is how middle step, then later step. So that way we can go in case of course of action. That is how the main action. Course of action does not mean you have to write pros and cons, or you have to write like this. No pros and cons needed. In course of action, you should not write no pros and cons. It is wrong to write pros and cons. And when you have to write justification, it's better that you write justification of all at one place. After writing this step-by-step course of action, then you write about justification if they have asked. In case of, so I guess it is clear that when you have to write critically evaluate, you have to suggest. That way when we'll take questions, we will also tell about this. When we say ethical dilemma, the dilemma is created basically before decision. Any decision when we take, it is before decision, and it will be between two competing values. So there can be two competing values. We can say that duty versus responsibility. So duty versus responsibility. Duty, you can have duty towards your country, duty towards people, duty towards families. You can have duty towards family, then, or let's say that duty towards nation. It depends. Then you have responsibility. It is your responsibility to execute law in a proper manner. So they may let's say compete. The most obvious aspect is law versus ethics. Many times you may have, so law versus ethics. Law is to enforce, but you know that enforcement of law can be very harsh. So just this results into a dilemma type of situation. And let's say the ethical issues. All ethical dilemma will be, if we say it is at X, so all ethical dilemma will be also ethical issues. So this you can write. But plus, this ethical issue means when there is anything, when we have, let's say, any values are affected. When values are affected. Like say act of corruption. When there is act of corruption. So bribe. So someone is taking bribe. Bribe means, let's say, honesty is destroyed. So when we try to take any such kind of, means whenever values are affected, that gives rise to ethical issues. And that can happen also in case of dilemma when there are two values are conflicting. But when a question is asking both, it is trying to test your clarity in understanding between ethical dilemma and ethical issues. That's why at times we try to ask this both, let's say, in the same question. And you should be clear about that. When we will ask in our theory section this question, further we will elaborate it. Means when we will ask question related to this related to this, then we will elaborate it in our discussion through examples, so you will get more clarity on this. That is how we can talk about in case of instructions in brief for time being. Then let's talk about structuring. When we say structuring, so already let's say a case study has A, B, C, D option already they have given. So there are options. Now what is structuring? It is already structured, but still since it is case study you are writing and it is also 250 words, a long answer type. So it's better that we should write anything that introduction and anything that we can introduce, and then we can write A, B, C, D, and then we can conclude this. Now, how introduction can be written? So nowadays there is no any standard. Let's say initial years there were standards and we used to tell about stakeholder approach and other things. But now let's say that already 9 years of case studies, ethics papers, so many things have happened, and therefore nowadays you can introduce with anything. You can introduce in that discussion. We told that introduction can be, so you can start with dimensions, and they can be introduction, dimensions, various dimensions. There are 4 or 5 dimensions. So that can be one aspect. You can start, or alternative, you can start with values. This, or there are alternatives. So there can be stakeholders, that way you can start. Or we give in our model answers ethical mapping. We will explain you one day or while having our discussion. Ethical mapping, this can be, or let's say that you can write yourself relating context by relating to context of question. This, so you start relating the context of the question. So when we relate with the context of the question is, last year they have asked one case study related to mining aspect. So you know that mining activities, recently Haryana incident happened that time. So then you can simply start that recently in Haryana, DSP was murdered, and that has resulted into once again a debate on how to deal against mining mafias and such kind of developments. So you can just introduce by having a context. That is very striking introduction. When we try to relate in our introduction with any such context, that itself can be one such introduction, and that is how you should try to, means you should have explained in this fashion. So let's say that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5 different ways you have to introduce. There is no one way to introduce, and you should try to develop your habit in which way you are comfortable, and that way, let's say at least we can write 2 case studies in this fashion. In one we can write, in another we can follow. So that way it gives also in 6 case studies you can have variety of things. So it will also break monotony and mechanization of introduction, and that way let's say that can we start with. Then once we have done this, then thereafter what you have to do? You have to conclude. So conclude, it makes your answer complete. When you write conclusion, it gives completeness, a sense of completeness. And it is the time that whatever things you have left, you have not written here. Many a time you review while writing, you come to know that this I have forgotten, a philosophy I have forgotten, I have not mentioned anything, a fact I have forgotten, or example I have forgotten. So then this is a time that you can write it. So conclusion is a place, or conclusion is the thing which can somehow, let's say, help you in covering those things which you are not able to write in the answer. Hence, that is how it can give you a sense of completeness. And conclusion is also a thing which gives your perspective, your thinking, what you think about that. And conclusive view closes the that answer, whatever the things you have written it. And it also gives opportunity to relate with any philosophy. So it gives you opportunity to relate with philosophy, because when you are writing option A, you are writing options, and it can be ethical issues, etc. B options you are writing, C ethical dilemma you are writing, D any suggestions you are writing. So you may not be able to incorporate the needed philosophies, etc. So this is also a place where you can incorporate a particular philosophy depending on the subject matter of the question. Let's try to see what is the subject matter of the question and accordingly try to relate with the philosophy. Let's say when we have environmental ethics, so if a case study is related to environment as a subject, so environmental ethics can come, planet, people, profit can come, that kind of philosophical relevance we can have. If it is related to education, it is related to health, if it is related to civil services, accordingly you can relate philosophy, and that is how you can in end you can have impression, and also a right impression. When we say end is well, all is well, this is how beginning can be. Let's introduction can be considered as having the lasting effect, lasting impression, and it is the last impression that you can leave while writing that case study answer. And that is how you can try to improve on this. So now we'll take one by one those case studies first today, and then we'll try to take theory section for discussion.
The first step towards achieving your dreams is having the right coach. Get the best education with Lukmaan IAS and make your UPSC dreams come true. Download the app now.